Joe, thank you for coming today. I want to introduce you just because I feel like one of my favorite things in the world is when someone gives me a real nice introduction, especially because I can add at the end, like, God, I hope my eulogy is that good. This is a classic funny thing. I've been working with Joe for about a year and a half now on various insane projects. I think that the most interesting at the time, the job that I got with you on the Watson campaign was the most interesting job I had ever had. And I credit it with giving me the opportunity to go in and learn about an entire discipline that I was super excited about and had no entry into. So, a little bit about your bio. You are the founder and owner of Genco Strategies, a political
That's what they tell
consulting
me.
firm. Something like, yep, he's doing it. And to kind of brag on you a little bit, you ran Mayor Kirk Watson's 24 campaign, right?
Yep, that's right.
How old were you when you ran that campaign?
Oh, I was 24.
I feel like one thing that was remarkable to me during the whole course of that campaign is we'd have consultants come in and we'd have all these really smart people come in, and everybody was at least like 50 who would come in and talk to you. And then it was just like I'd watch them in the background, they're all having serious discussions. I was like, that is the model for how I want to be.
Hey, look, what I would say, Indiana Jones said it best. It's not the years, it's the mileage.
Right.
You can be young, but if you go through a lot of things and you're kind of an old soul, you don't really think about the age part of it. You're like that too, I think.
I think so as well. So
I mean, we joke about you being a 1930s man, so just kind of the way that you interact with people. And that's a good thing. It's a compliment, I promise, mostly. But it helps you get along with folks.
I'm very fortunate my girlfriend puts up with it. I'm really not
Yeah,
sure
you're
how
lucky.
it works. I think lucky is probably the best way to put that. So, one of the questions I've been most excited to ask you is, what do people do in Weatherford, Texas?
Go to Walmart. There's a lot of exciting things in Weatherford. We have Confederate monuments out front of the courthouse. We've got two Walmarts. When they built the second Walmart, that was really when things were really growing. That was a sign that it was a changing community. And it's true. It's really, really interesting. We worked. Weatherford when I was a kid. Was really, really small, but it's actually kind of grown in population.
How many people?
It's about like 40,000
Oh
ish
shit.
now.
Okay.
But it was about like 20 and smaller than that when I was younger. You have a lot of people who are moving in from Fort Worth and all sorts of other places, who kind of want to live the suburban dream. And so they're building all these subdivisions right now. They're really ruining all my pretty country views of the place, and the schools are getting more overcrowded. And there's a lot going on up there, but there's not all that much to do. That's why I've enjoyed being in Austin. It's the nicest place I've ever lived, so I'll take it.
Yeah. Well, kind of thinking about your upbringing and the way in coming to Austin, you spent a lot of time in Weatherford. You spent time at least around the culture of Chicago.
Yeah, sure.
And Austin as well. I feel like having someone who's been around such diverse environments, how do you feel like that kind of experience has affected you?
Oh, in a lot of ways. I always laugh because I struggle with the question, "Where are you from?" And you can hear it in my accent sometimes. It'll get all southern. There'll be a little draw, and then sometimes you'll hear some Chicago pop in there. Here every once in a while. And so, no, I mean, I was born in Chicago, mostly raised in Weatherford. Spent a lot of my summers in Chicago. Also spent a lot of time in Louisiana, Slidell, outside of New Orleans, real God's country. And then ended up actually going to high school in Fort Worth. So kind of all around the place there. And it was very interesting because you meet a lot of different types of people. I've never really fully felt like I fit in a wholly 100% anywhere I ever was. I've always felt that I was an outsider, and I've always relished the opportunity to be an outsider.
Right.
And that helped contribute to a lot of individualism because it was interesting for me. Being a kid, going to public schools in Weatherford, and then getting into a private school in Fort Worth. And we had money in my house. We were never poor or anything like that, but we didn't have money like the kids in Fort Worth had money.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting because I was too poor for the rich kids and too rich for the poor kids, and things like that. And so people looked at me a lot differently growing up. And so I think that being around all sorts of different types of people, being around really rich people, being around really poor people, being around people from Illinois and Louisiana, and having family all over the place, things like that. And being involved in athletics too. So I mean, you meet all sorts of types of people.
Yeah.
That kind of allows you to prepare for being able to have a conversation with anybody about anything.
Yeah.
And I think that served me really well in the political world.
Yeah. One of the things I think that's most interesting about um, politics is a vote from a poor person is the exact same value as a vote from someone who has $1 billion. And as a result, it just matters which people you can connect with most effectively.
That's right.
You have vote. Go ahead.
It depends on the candidate. It
Right.
depends on the strength of your message and how you're messaging things. But yeah, I mean, it is the great leveler. It is where we're all equal in one place, no matter what. Every vote is equal to another vote, and so there's something nice about that.
Right. And now I know you were engaged in politics before you came to Austin, but I feel like a lot of the most fascinating political stories I know about you happened kind of after that shift into when you became a Longhorn. Would you say that's accurate?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've been around campaigns since I was in diapers.
Okay.
My mom was the county party chair in Parker County for the Democrats, which is
Shout out, Mom.
yeah, I believe that's a county that went like 84% for Trump last time, something like that. Yeah, no, it was pretty rough, but it was very fun to be around her and do campaigns. She had me making buttons, child labor at like age 8, things like that. They were not union made buttons, and I mean, childcare for me was going to county executive committee meetings of precinct chairs, and so that's actually a form of child abuse in 40 states, but they don't tell you that. So I've been around it a while, and I had kind of that interest, and how I kind of got involved was. Actually, I sold Cutco knives door to door. Did you ever own a pair of Cutco?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, all right. So Cutco knives, it's a perfectly legal MLM, by the way. Just to really, hammer that home. To clarify, it is not illegal. But point is, I was not a very good knife salesman. There's a kind of the coup de grace of the whole experience is when you cut a penny in half. And with this really sharp scissors, I actually failed to cut the penny twice. And so because I failed, I was like, I'm not doing this. Is the most humiliating thing ever. But I like going door to door.
Right.
And it was right as Democratic campaigns started paying $15 an hour to knock doors. Yeah, I was like, I'm gonna be interested in do this. And so I did that and a lot of volunteer work and stuff like that in high school. Then I went to UT, did the whole University Democrats thing and college Democrats statewide, and got really involved in local politics. And so that kind of really was where I got started. I kind of came out of nowhere, in a lot of ways. Like I didn't really have political connections in DFW or anything like that. I mean, my mom was the Parker County Democratic Party chair, but that's not like,
title of much prestige.
Right, exactly. It's pretty easy to obtain up there. But, no offense to Deborah, but, coming down here, it was like, you have to meet people. You have to go out and really do that on your own. And, you have to have kind of some good mentors, and especially people who will introduce you to other people. Right. And that leads to great things. And, yeah, man, I think UT and my opportunities that I got at UT really kickstarted where I am today.
Yeah, I think two things. When people talk about the ways in which their college educations have benefited them, I see some vast differences between people, right? So you have effectively the same amount of resources available to all kinds of students, right?
Yeah.
If only you're there to access them. If only you'll go out and try.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing is true about mentors. How do you put yourself out there as the person who this mentor should take on? Because thinking about some of those people, how did you convince them that you were going to be someone?
Oh, no, it wasn't a convincing type of thing. It just takes listening to people.
Okay.
I think that, older people, and not just like old people, but people who are older than you and have been in your field longer than you, in my experience, 9 times out of 10 want to talk to you. They want to tell you things. They want to give you advice. Everybody loves giving somebody else advice, especially in a world like this.
Right.
And so if you stick around long enough and you listen to them and you ask them about things that they did and that they accomplished and what they think about certain things, you pick up things. And then they realize that oh, this is a pretty perceptive guy. This is somebody who, you provide them information that you hear, things like that, and
Yeah.
you're able to talk the game a little bit with
Sure.
them. And so, in doing that, you just sort of, I mean, I guess you prove yourself, but you prove yourself to be somebody who is interested
Yeah.
and is willing to work. And really, that's all it takes. I mean, I would rather have a young person who is going to work hard, even if they don't know anything, in my corner than the most, knowledgeable person
Sure.
possible in the field, who's older and isn't going to do anything for me, or
Agreed.
like has baggage and things like that. People love mentoring young people, and so I had a lot of good mentors who I was able to listen to, and were able to kind of put me in the right places at the right times, and so that's part of why I am where I am.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating transition though from becoming a mentee to becoming a peer. Because a lot of the people in my mind, well, I guess I'll ask you if you think this is true. Do you feel like a lot of the people who mentored you coming up are now in some ways colleagues of yours or peers, people who you work alongside, as opposed to people who are educating you
Yeah,
through?
no, kind of. I mean, I always view people. I always view them as mentors still, though.
Right.
I mean, and people who I can bounce questions off of and advice off of, defer to on certain things, and so I still kind of view them as educators. I hope to be seen as a peer by them, but really more than anything else, I still consider them mentors to me, and that doesn't really ever change. Even if we're um, doing a lot of the same stuff and things like that.
Right.
And some of them are even competitors of mine now and things like
Interesting.
that. And but um, that's what we do. So I mean, we're able to talk about it and work together on certain things, and we're all stronger when we work together than against.
Yeah. I think well, one, it shows the discipline and humility to be able to appreciate people as mentors and to remember them as such. I find that oftentimes as you achieve increased success, the tendency to want to slog off those people who have supported you is a strange thing that happens
Yeah,
quite a lot.
it does.
I would say I've seen it a lot in the political discipline, but also outside of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You get big for your britches, and you're like, I'm a pretty cool guy now. But one of the things I really appreciate about you is you value loyalty and continued relationships far above bringing the newest person to the ball, so to speak. Right?
Well, and also like over individual campaigns.
Sure.
You can't take any of this stuff personally. This is
Okay.
a contact sport.
Yeah.
It is, if you are doing this, if you're engaging in campaign work, you have to do what you can to win and do right by your client. And you cannot let it become personal in any way for yourself, because there's a lot of people who will insult you, who will attack you, whatever else. But as long as you understand that, we're all playing the same game here,
Yeah.
and you don't take any of it personally, then you're able to make better decisions. And,
Right.
campaigns come and go, they're over, but then there's going to be new ones. And then there's going to be other opportunities in the future. And so, I always like to joke, one burn bridge to a cycle, I mean, don't try not to burn any bridges with
Right.
people, on your end. I mean, I have extremely little ill will
Right.
towards people who I've been on the other side of,
Right.
and that would surprise a lot of them who have a lot of ill will towards me.
Mm.
And the other, and especially you don't want to do that with people who, you matter to you a lot and
Yes.
have helped you in the past and you've helped in the past, because relationships are more important than all of that. And, the key tenet that I was taught in politics, there's one really, I mean, someone once said that loyalty is the only virtue in politics.
Okay.
And what that I boil down to is never your friends. Never.
Sure.
You're not allowed to do that. That is the cardinal sin. If you help your friends, you always help your friends succeed. And even if you're on the other side of your friends, sometimes they're still your friends. And so you
Right.
never screw them in a way
Right.
that truly hurts them.
Right.
And if you do that, you're going to go a very, very long way.
Do you feel as if behaving in that manner is more feasible on a local level than it is on a national level?
Oh, I don't think there's any difference. I mean, certain consultants and candidates and staff at all levels of politics will all work together for very long periods of time, or not, depending on what happens. But I mean, I think that that's just a truism, not only in politics but in most things, at all levels. Loyalty is extremely, extremely important.
Yeah. So looking at one of the things that you've spoken about there is the tough skin required to play this game. You
Yeah.
cannot take some of this stuff personally.
Yep.
This is one of the questions I think has been most interesting to me for a business like yours. So, as you're building that brand and you're growing it, but also defending it, how do you protect your brand against races that do not end in favorable outcomes?
Well, look, I mean, losing is part of this.
Right.
Losing is part of life. It's part of this line of work. You can win a lot, but the law of averages still dictates that eventually you're going to lose.
Right.
The important thing to protect your brand is to win.
Right.
Winning solves everything. Seriously, I mean, somebody's mad at you.
Sure.
Okay, who cares? You won. You screwed something up. Who cares? You won.
Right.
That fixes every problem. Now, sometimes that's not possible, and sometimes we have to take on things that are losers out of loyalty, as aforementioned.
That's hard.
To people, and it's hard. But sometimes you do what you got to do because somebody has been good to you,
Sure.
or vice versa. But you just have to be able to focus on trying to win the next one, and kind of getting yourself and dusting yourself off. In Friday Night Lights, there's a great quote
Classic.
in the movie, in the film version, that Gary Gaines, Billy Bob Thornton, says, where he says, there's not much difference between winning and losing except how people treat you. And that's true.
Yeah.
It took me a very, very long time to learn that, embarrassingly long time. I'm an extremely competitive person.
Sure.
You ask anybody who I grew up with, if you beat me in Madden, I would sit there and play you until I won, or anything. I'm like that with anything. I have a roommate who loves Smash Bros. I'm horrible. I never played it growing up or anything.
Yeah.
And he just would kick my butt over and over again.
Yeah.
But I still made him play until I beat him. And it took hours, to do that.
course.
That's the kind of person I am. But point is, on the inside, it doesn't really feel all that different.
Yeah.
It's just like how people perceive you and how people treat you after the fact. If you're the winner, everyone wants to be your friend.
Yeah.
You get tickets to stuff, you get to get jobs, you get to
Sure.
get money, you get to, people want to buy you meals, people want to talk to you, you're the hot young thing. Then you lose and it's like, oh hi. And you learn a lot about people and how they treat you, after the fact.
Right.
And so, that sucks. But you're able to protect your brand by winning, by bearing down and finding a way to win something else and to keep things going. That's really the best way to do that. And, I think generally, when you lose, it's important that people know that you're a fighter.
Okay.
I like to think that, I'm a pretty aggressive campaigner.
Sure.
And a
What
lot
does
of
that
people
mean?
know. I like to attack.
Okay.
I love attack ads. I love putting together things to punch people.
Sure.
Sometimes I can get a little carried away and punch down a little bit, and I shouldn't be doing that.
Right.
But I love making it as uncomfortable as possible for my opponent.
Right.
And that's the kind of guy that I am. And I just want people to know that if they're looking to hire me, that I'm going to fight for them.
Right.
And even if we're going to lose, I'm going to scratch and claw and do everything I possibly can, and know how to do to try to get us into a better position. And so, sometimes you go down with the ship, but people know that you gave it your all. And, if you can look at people in the eye, even after you lost, and legitimately say, I did everything I possibly could to help you,
Yeah.
that means something.
Yeah. I've noticed that a lot of Genco's clients are repeat buyers, right? It's people who come back, they buy once, they buy a second time, or
Sure.
at the very least, they buy it for themselves and then they're referring their friends. What do you think that says about your business and the quality of your product?
Well, I like to think that I'm somebody who's available for people all the time. My phone is always on, and I'm never, ducking calls from somebody who's paying me to do
Sure.
something. I'm willing to adapt with people and their needs. I'm willing to bring in, others, kind of from their circles who
Sure.
they think would be more effective at certain things, or, they feel comfortable working with. I always like to keep the tent large, and work with as many people as I
Right.
possibly can. And so, I'm not gonna I think people feel like they have ownership of their campaign.
Sure.
If I'm running it, there's a lot of other firms where a lot of people feel like the campaigner is controlling everything and things like that. And it's important that the campaigner is bought in, but at the same time, at the end of the day, I'm not going to do things unilaterally. I'm not going to. It's your campaign, and I think it's important that people know that even if I'm the one executing it, and so I like I said, it's just being available and being honest with people. I like to think that I'm a straight shooter. Whether that's giving them bad news or giving them good news or whatever the case is, I like to tell them how I think their campaign is doing, and even if they don't like it, I always try to stay honest with people. And so I think if people understand that you're an honest person that will tell them the truth, if they feel like you're not controlling of every aspect of everything, and you're willing to bring people in who are possibly better than you at something or know the candidate better than you, and you're available, then they will reach out to you.
Yeah, I'll say one thing. From my own background in consulting and in lobbying, one of the important things is how do you deliver bad news? There's going to be bad news, right? We're going to get sued. We're saying, something's going to fall through. We missed this, X, Y, or Z. How do you frame bad news in a way which creates, which does not bring negative focus onto you and your brand, but rather presents yourself as, hey, this happened. It's unfortunate. Here's how I present myself as a solution.
Yeah, I mean, when you get bad news, the first thing that you want to try to have is a solution.
Okay.
Or at least, concepts of a plan, as our esteemed president once said.
DT.
Yeah, but, you want to be able to say something bad has happened.
Right.
Here's how I'm handling it.
Right.
And then let them ask you questions about it. You never want to have any fluff in there like, hey, you want the good news or the bad news first, or like, hey, you're doing great, but like a sandwich.
We're down
of news.
30 points.
You're doing so good. I'm so proud of you. Can we do this a little differently? No, you just tell them like, all right, there's a problem. It's because of this. My suggestion for fixing it is this. What do you think?
Right. Yeah.
Something like that. Keep it simple, no fluff, no BS.
Reminds me of how Billy Beane cut players in Moneyball. You know what I mean? He said,
you just tell them.
Yep, you've been traded to the Cleveland Indians. Actually, Cleveland Guardians. Sorry, guys.
Gonna have to edit that one out of the podcast.
Well, to be fair, in the Moneyball movie, they were still the Indians. So,
right.
it works. And, it's if there's bad news, we need to communicate it immediately, and you need to be upfront and present the problem. I think that's super important.
Yeah.
One other thing that I think that people, it's always funny to me in finance. People are like, well, why do investment bankers work so hard? Why do they work so hard? Why are the hours so long? And then one of the things I don't think people understand about consulting is you need to be available to the client whenever the client needs you. I honestly feel like I learned a lot of that watching your reps. Where did you learn that?
Oh, I just, like I said, I have very good mentors who I've watched for a long time. But, I think that the environments in which I've succeeded the most have been ones in which I've felt like whoever it is, the client or whatever principal, is not looking over my shoulder and questioning the nitty gritty details of what I do, because I know what I do and it's why they brought me there.
Yeah.
I can listen to their advice and how they want to direct certain things. But if I'm being asked granular questions, that are really, really specific to my job and things like that, then I'm not going to do as well in that kind of environment. Right. If I screw up, if I make a mistake, I want to be able to own that mistake. But I want to be able to honestly tell you what I'm working on, answer some questions about it, and then just let me do my work. And I think that the client relationships that are best with a consultant, especially in a campaign space, is the one where the client is asking good questions and is bought in, and really, really cares and understands what's going on. But isn't asking me, specific questions about voter data and how did you cut this? How did you cut this list? How did you do this? How did you do that? Just basic kind of thing. Basic questions are great. But if you're really you shouldn't cut that list that way. Why are you not adding this type of voter in this list? Whatever like that. That's where that gets annoying. And then,
Totally.
people don't succeed in those types of
Yeah. Well,
environments.
they're not valuing your expertise. They're
No,
paying
you're
you.
paying me to
That's
do something.
literally.
If you don't want me here, you can let me go. Fire me. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. Stepping back a little bit, what was the first campaign you ever ran that was like a serious one?
Yeah,
for
no,
you?
the first campaign I ever ran where I was in charge was Margaret Gomez's reelection, 2022. The campaign was like Vietnam.
How so?
It was everything possible that could have gone wrong went wrong.
Yeah.
It was it was incredibly violent. It was a slog. It lasted 9 months.
Sure.
When it should have been a cut. Going into it, I thought this was going to be like a fun learning experience, but no, but it was a lot of fun.
Right.
And it was funny because I was kind of going through a lot of changes in my life around that time, and kind of just figuring out what my purpose was, what I was going to do, if I was even going to do politics, things like that. And I just decided, let's start a business. Let's just do campaign work. Let's see how this goes. And it was hard to get meetings with people. It was hard to get clients, things like that. And when you're really starting out, you don't really have a choice as to your clients.
Oh yeah.
You just take who will pay you. I really lucked out with Commissioner Gomez, somebody who I consider to be an important mentor figure in my life, who gave me that opportunity when I was 21 years old, and I didn't know what I was doing.
21, and you're running one of the TC
and I was a mess, like personally, and so she reaching out and kind of giving me that opportunity. I got it through mentors who had worked with her in the past and who helped convince her that I would be good enough to do this. And I learned how to do everything in that campaign because we didn't have any help. It was us versus the world, basically.
Right.
It was me, two other people, and the commissioner, who were running that campaign in a different way. One of those people's job was to provide advice, and that person lived in a foreign country and would send me advice from on the Signal chat at I'd send questions at 11 p.m. and I'd get answers back when I woke up. Then the other guy was responsible for helping raise money. Everything else fell to me in that campaign. And so you're forced to learn and adapt really quickly. And I made a ton of mistakes during that campaign, horrible mistakes. But God, was it fun. And, we won very narrowly. We won because we worked really hard, and we worked really hard in the field. We came back and we did the thing. And, we were actually losing going into election night in early vote. And we were one of the few campaigns that flipped around and ended up winning, despite losing early vote in Travis County. It's not really a trend that we see often. And so that was really special. And there's really nothing like winning that first campaign. I don't think I proved to many other people that I was great at what I did, but I proved to myself that I could do it.
And you won.
And that was the most important thing.
Yeah.
I proved to myself that I belonged. And that's why that campaign is always going to be very special to me.
Yeah. Well, and it's incredible. Travis County is one of the biggest in the United States. I mean, there's going to be plenty of other ones that are large, but Austin's a huge place.
Yeah, it's a big county.
Amount of people here. And, the Commissioner's Court is a high-stakes spot. I mean, this is something that really impacts the future of our city.
Yeah.
They make decisions over a massive budget. And so how do you feel like you were able to get a reputation which was sufficient enough to warrant you getting that opportunity at such a young age?
Like I said, I just had really good people who could vouch for me, who were mentors, who could help out a lot. And, they were, I didn't really have the credentials before that. I mean, I'd done some campus activism stuff, and I had done some stuff in the party, but, I didn't have the credentials to run that kind of race. I probably shouldn't have been the person in charge. I didn't have the credentials to start my own business and do all these stuff, but sometimes you just got to do it anyways, and that's how you learn, is by just trying and screwing up, and then learning how to move forward.
I'm going to imagine you worked 2x harder than anybody else would have.
Yeah, you had to,
done, especially considering whatever you were comped.
You had to, because you have to work really hard when you're at that point in your career, because you have to show people that you can do this, and show yourself that you can do this. You need to win. Winning solves everything, like I said. But like I said, I had a mentor who provided me office space and things like that, so I had a place to go every day that was not my dorm room, not my apartment. I had places to go, and people to talk to for advice who I could bounce things off of. That was incredibly helpful.
Yeah. So Going from there, what do you feel like your next big break was in the political scene?
It was Mayor Watson's runoff. Certainly, that was kind of my career making race, and I was very lucky to have kind of a career making thing happen early.
Sure.
Most people don't have that kind of opportunity ever, let alone when they're 22. For me, after Commissioner Gomez's race, I did a couple other stuff, consulting and a couple other states, some ballot measures things, and did another small campaign, and then worked at the Travis County Democratic Party. And I was brought on to the Watson campaign
in
22, in the runoff. After we had finished up the party, I was exhausted.
Right.
I mean, you want to talk about hard work and all this stuff, that was that period of time from August to December in 2022. I've still never worked as hard as I ever did.
Really?
In that time period, because, I felt like, I was perhaps maybe a little entitled that, I had won this really hard race with Margaret, and so all these opportunities should come, and they weren't really coming. I had some small campaigns, which I'm very grateful for, and really good people who I was helping out, but I was really hoping to land a large opportunity coming out of that, and I didn't get it, and I was pretty mad. I really struggled financially in that time, putting things together and doing this. So I had to take a job at the party. That provided a really good landing spot for me. It wasn't the most fun job in the world because you're just getting out the vote for the party, and it was actually really stressful too. I mean, there's a whole sidebar on some of that, but learned a lot still, and what I learned through that experience was that if I didn't have the experience of the party, I would not have been able to do the Watson runoff, because the Watson campaign was in a position in which they essentially had no field campaign in the first round of that election. They didn't push hard on doors and phones and texts. The targeting was kind of out of whack. It was a mess, and they needed to run a field campaign in the runoff, because the runoff is a smaller electorate, and we have an idea of who his supporters are, and we need to go out and get them to vote. It's just a giant campaign of getting out the vote.
Right. Interesting.
And we were, I was the only person in town who had just run a massive field operation. We had a staff of 30 people that we could literally just copy and paste.
Right.
And that's what we did. And there was no stoppage.
Sure.
I learned about all sorts of really great vendors that I could use for field. And so I was able to hop on as the field director in that runoff, and with myself and a lot of other really smart people who've been at this for a long time. Everyone really worked at 110%.
Yeah.
They were operating at their highest levels. We couldn't really afford to make mistakes.
No.
And so it was really, really special to be a part of. And anybody who was there, it was kind of a blood bond between people who were on that campaign, because it was really, really hard. And I had not, outside of Labor Day and one day, September 26th, I had not had a day off between August, let's call it 14th through December 14th.
What'd you do on September 26th?
I had a family thing I had to rush up for. It was not even like a break. It was like, hey, I have to take work off today because there's a disaster going on.
Of course.
So, it was a personal thing. But other than that, it was stressful. And point is, I had not had a break. And, I was working, 12, 13-hour days every day in that time period, managing a large field staff, staying in until everybody came back. And then, the runoff was the same thing. You get in at 7 a.m., you do all your numbers, you do everything that you need to do, and then get everybody going for voter contact the day or whatever else was on the agenda. I got to tell you, it was really challenging. But, I worked on Thanksgiving. I sent my poor mother drove down, and I forced her to write vote by mail letters with me. We wrote 500, 600 letters just sitting there all day. But that's what it takes to win. And if you want to win and you want to improve yourself, that's what it takes. And I was rewarded with a job in the mayor's office, and learned a heck of a lot about the city, and it was a lot of fun.
Before we talk at all about your work at the city, how long was that stretch?
It was from win to win, roughly.
Right. So, when you came on to the Watson campaign versus the end of the runoff.
35 days.
35 days. Okay. And what do you
into
feel
fun.
like those 35 days did for your personal reputation?
I mean, it did a lot. I mean, people saw that I was a hard worker, and that I was good at what I did. That was huge for me, and it was people who could advocate for me and put me in other places, like the mayor's office, who saw that work and saw something in me, and so that did a lot for my personal reputation. But it also did a lot for my confidence, and it did a lot for my knowledge of what my team could do. There's a lot of people who I worked with on that campaign. Who carried me through a lot of it, and I owe a lot of gratitude to. And I learned about their abilities too, and that gave me confidence that, hey, maybe there could be some kind of system coming out of this. So,
yeah. What do you feel like the connection is between your confidence in your own abilities and other people's perception of your abilities?
I mean, I think that there's definitely a connection there. I mean, I think that my confidence is something that I've struggled with over time. So,
Really?
People would be kind of shocked to hear that.
Yeah,
I
for
think,
sure.
Because I'm a pretty loudmouth kind of person. I'm actually would consider myself to be pretty introverted, and I like to go home and at a reasonable hour watch sports and not talk to people. I don't like going out. I don't like going to political events. I don't like doing things, with people. But I've had a lot of self-doubt over time. But when you succeed, you're able to trust yourself a little more. When you follow your gut and you do what you think is right, and you make what you think are the right decisions, that makes you go, maybe I've figured this out a little bit. Maybe I'm not as stupid as I think. But at the same time, as your reputation grows in a positive way, you can't listen to the noise, in one way or another, positive or negative. When you're, like I said, when you're a loser, nobody likes you, and nobody wants to be around a loser, and they're gonna say horrible things to you on social media or elsewhere. They're gonna try. People who don't have anything else going on in their lives are going to attack you. That's what they do.
Right.
But when you're winning, people tell you how great you are and all this, that, and the other, and they don't. A lot of them don't really mean that. They will flip on you very quickly if you become a loser, or a nobody. So it's like you have to kind of parse out what's real and what's fake with people. And you have to just have confidence in yourself, and believe in yourself, even if it can be a little irrational at times. Because you can be really struggling on a campaign, and you have to go look at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm that guy. I'm the one who's going to win this thing.
Right.
I'm saving the city.
Yeah, something like that.
Even if that's insane.
Well, one of the things I really enjoyed about Lyndon Johnson that I feel like is a skill I've attempted to develop is his ability to rile himself up.
Yeah.
I remember there's a vote where he was trying to remove the head of the power, like electricity authority. And they're going through this guy's record, and he's a very liberal Democrat, like a New Deal Democrat at that time. And this is just when the Red Scare stuff was getting started. So they're trying to paint him as a communist. And it's obviously not true. This guy has been, I think his last name may have been Olds, maybe Leland, not sure exactly though. They're trying to paint him in this negative light. And he's kind of convincing himself of these things that aren't true. Like he's a communist and other things. And so overnight, apparently comes back into the office, and he goes from like what's obviously the smear campaign to being convinced that he's on the side of the angels and we are righteous and we're saving the United States from communism. And they were saving it. And like when you have that degree of energy about you, and even to some degree, the ability to create an illusion of grandeur. I think that's powerful. You get so excited. It becomes almost a mystical thing. I think that's a lot of fun.
Gets you out of a lot of problems too. I mean, you could be working really, really hard, and you could be needing to find inspiration, and sometimes you just got to hype yourself up.
It's whatever. It's for me, it can be baseball montages. It doesn't matter. It's just whatever it takes.
It's also, going out and fighting people, sometimes does that for me. I mean, like I'm a fighter. Like I said, I can get really energized. If I'm feeling down and if I'm feeling out, to go out and attack and see what happens. Throw a punch.
You mentioned your time working at the city. What do you feel like? What kind of an effect do you feel like that had on you?
I learned a lot about city government. I think that, kind of why it was really, really beneficial in coming out and then running the re-election campaign was I understood how the city worked, and I understood how all the stories of everything that had happened. I knew the full story of Kirk Watson's
Sure.
first term,
Yeah,
this
yeah, yeah.
half term weird thing, that had to happen, like because of the changing the election dates, and whatever. Like I had been there for everything,
Yeah.
and even if I wasn't the decision maker in that office in any way, and didn't really own any policy areas, things like that, I was around when things were happening, and so I learned this is the true story of this. This is this person who can help us later down the line.
Nice.
All of those things were extremely valuable and made it possible for me to come back and run the reelection.
Right.
That said, as much as I loved learning about city departments and loved meeting all the players and local politics, and being along the Kirk Watson experience ride for
Sure.
a little over a year in that office, it was not a place for me. And I
Right.
learned that about myself, is that I'm not an office worker. I'm
Okay.
not somebody who can show up for a 9 to 5 type of thing. There's this little balcony behind what was my office in there, and I used to go out there, pace just back and forth like a caged white tiger. I would take long walks around downtown when I just didn't have anything to do for a little while. And city government is so much hurry up and slow down. It's not like the environment of a campaign at all. I'm an adrenaline junkie.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. I succeed in environments that are chaotic, and things are moving very quickly. I don't succeed in environments that I feel are slower. Even if there is plenty of chaos at the city, that's part of it.
Oh, of course.
But it's not really. I'm not a policy person, and I'm not a policy maker. I'm not interested in making policy, and I really learned that in that experience.
Well, and I think they also legally and ethically would never ask you to work 15-hour days.
No, you can't. I'm not getting paid enough for that.
No, but
I mean, even though sometimes they can be long, you can have
yeah.
15-hour days when you're working at the city, things like that. There's plenty of that. But it's not like on a campaign where like
It's
you
every
have
day.
to, and it's every day and crunch time. Yeah.
Yeah, and so coming into 24, would you say that so you were obviously I think you were in charge of field in 22.
That's right.
And then so in 24, you're now in charge of the whole show.
That's right.
How was that transition?
Oh, I mean, it was fun, honestly, because there were people who were, responsible for different things, within that campaign. And so it was not only me being in charge of whatever, when you're the campaign manager, you're the one executing the campaign.
Right.
You are, the quarterback, and you may feel like you have the worst offensive line on earth, of a bunch of 12-year-olds, but
the Bengals.
Yeah, sure. Right. And it's, you're in the Super Bowl and you're playing prime Brady. And if you don't lose, you're going to get shot in the head tomorrow. That's how some of that feels.
Right.
But, you have really good coaches. You have really good people who will tell you what to do.
Sure.
And then your job is to go out and execute it. And so, for instance, I don't have a creative bone in my body.
I say the same thing about myself.
Canva template, great. I got you. But other than that, I'm not going to be able to create anything nice. I know it looks good.
Sure.
I have taste, but I can't create things. And so, being able to rely on other people to create stuff, and, kind of direct what that is. And then, other things that I may not succeed at as much. That's why it was great to have such a big team of people, and especially young people, who we could kind of plug into sort of different areas where we felt like they succeeded.
Yeah.
Whether that's just knocking doors or, adding some other sort of responsibility for the campaign,
sure.
going to staff the mayor at an event because I can't make it or something like that,
Right.
And so it's always a place where everybody has just kind of a defined role. It was just a little different because it was bigger and there was a lot more heat and a lot more attention.
Yeah, I think it reminds me of a quote from the Steve Jobs movie where it's just like, what do you actually do here at Apple? And, your job is to play the orchestra.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
There's going to be, there's all these parts moving in tandem, and so many people are so skilled, and your job is to make sure the music sounds right.
What was amazing is that, in that campaign, the biggest challenges that we had, in my opinion, was that it was an emotional campaign in a lot of ways because it was very long.
Yeah.
There was talk about having no days off, I think I had 3 in July and 1 in August and then Labor Day, and that was it. For a long time, and then it didn't really even end after it was over because we had to deal with, stuff. But whatever, it's over. But
right.
we lost an organizer, as who passed away, and that was really challenging. And there were other things that were challenging that other people faced on that campaign too, that we had to face and confront in leadership of it. And so, that was the big thing there. But I never felt like, despite the pressure being much higher on me and the attention being much higher on me and my brand and on the mayor,
Right.
it was never as stressful as Gomez. It was never as stressful as Watson 22,
No.
because it just felt different. I never felt like, even though it was a bigger deal to be in that chair,
Yeah.
I never felt like the pressure was too much because I had been through what I felt like were worse scenarios before.
Yeah. Well, and so I think that's how you find yourself being, the ripe old age of 25 and being, having more experience than just about having the same amount of experience as anybody else who's competing with you.
Like Indiana Jones said, it's not the years, it's the mileage.
Yeah, precisely. And so kind of going into the present day and the clients you work with now, why do people come to Genco Strategies?
I think they know that they're going to get somebody who's fresh and somebody who's new and a team of people who are fresh and new. It's not just me. I have an incredible field director in Sarah McGee who works her tail off,
Right.
And is somebody who can throw things back in my face and tell me I'm wrong,
Sure.
and convince me I'm wrong, and isn't afraid to stand up to my crap sometimes that I pull. And Matt McCoy, who works really, really hard in managing his races and is a really eager and smart, committed young person.
Right.
So you hire all of us when you hire Django Strategies, and you get what well, the other benefit is we work with enough people to where we can help with any sort of aspect of a campaign.
Yeah.
Whether we're doing the full thing or just part of the thing.
Sure.
And so we're really willing to be flexible about it. I don't have to own the whole campaign.
Yeah.
I'm willing to work with others to do things. And I think when they hire us, they know they're going to get somebody who will fight for them.
Yeah.
And when they hire us, they'll know that they get somebody who will make sure things happen on time for them, and then will be responsive to their needs.
Yeah. What do you feel like your vision is for the future of Genco?
I don't know. I really don't know. I don't think that far ahead, if I'm
Sure.
being perfectly honest. Every time I ever tried to make a future plan of some kind, it always unravels. If you had asked me when
Sure.
I was, 8 years old, what are you going to do when you grow up?
Astronaut.
I would not have told you, regional political consultant,
exactly.
based in Central Texas.
Yeah.
That's not what I would have told you.
Sure.
But even beyond like childhood fantasies, every time I've said in 5 years I'm going to be doing this or
Right.
that or the other, I just can't tell you that. I don't know how this is going to grow, but it's growing.
Literally.
We're getting new clients all the time. We're working with a lot of cool people, really, really great candidates that we really love a lot, and other clients too that are in kind of the private sector as well, who I really have enjoyed working with. Our team is growing. We're learning more. We're doing more things. I don't know where it's going to end up, and I'm sorry that's a vague answer that doesn't really answer your
Makes
question,
sense.
but I'm excited to see where it does.
Well, I think one of the things it shows is confidence, right? I think it's when people have everything planned out to a T, it just shows that they're not. It shows to me that they're not necessarily prepared for the variability of life.
Yeah.
We have very little control.
Bad things happen all the time.
Yeah, or even good things that you don't
I could
expect.
walk out of this place right now and a anvil could fall on my head, like an Acme, kill me, Roadrunner style. That could happen.
Todd,
today.
did you tell him about the anvil? We told him about the anvil. That's
But
terrible.
I'm
That
just
was supposed to be a
saying,
surprise.
It's supposed to be a surprise, right?
God.
You never know what's going to happen. Your Looney Tunes style death is possible.
That's right.
Every day. You wake up, you got to live a new day and live it to its fullest. I truly, truly believe that. I've seen enough and been around enough to know that we can't take life's blessings for granted.
Yeah, right.
And so, we can't think too far ahead because today could be the last day.
For sure. Well, so, DSE being a media company, I can't help but ask a question like this.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen kind of the rise of social media and its use as a political tool.
Yeah.
Definitely on the national level, I'd say we've seen some in some of the bigger races. Definitely in New York, there was a lot of thinking about that stuff, and probably at a state level as well. What kind of an impact do you feel like social media has on local campaigns?
I mean, look, what I would say is that I have never hired somebody to be a communications director on a local race, something
Sure.
like that, because that's a waste of money. What you do on social media is you digitally target people in a local race. You go out to your voters and You have your list of voters, and you can specifically send ads and whatever else you need to them, to that set of people, whatever demographics you split them up as, things like that. Social media plays some role in local campaigns. It's generally people who, it's nasty Facebook groups, things like that. And every municipality in the United States of America has a mean Facebook group about their local government. That's something that I've learned. And there's people in there who are unhinged. But or there's mean people on Twitter or whatever. That's not real life. Most people are in their interactions with politics is national. Some state, mostly national.
Right.
And so people are seeing that on social media. That's what's posted on social media. I think it plays a way bigger role elsewhere. Here, it plays a role in being able to target people, but hardly have I ever seen an issue of engaged local voters on social media, whatever they're angry about, becoming an actual issue in an election.
Sure.
Twitter's not real life.
Yeah, well, and Twitter is a specifically special place where I've known people to be as absolutely insane as they can possibly
I love
get.
it. I mean, it's
My
heinous.
God, Joe.
It's heinous. No, I mean, people are so mean, but I love it. I absolutely love it.
Okay. Well, Joe, I want to be respectful of your time. Thank you so much for coming.
I was really, really happy to be here, man. And it's really good to see all you guys working together and building something really cool.
It's a pleasure.
I'm going to throw a question back at you now.
Go ahead.
Where do you see DSE going from here?
So let me think for a second. I have two plans. You have an immediate one, and you have a longer term one. We've picked up a ridiculous amount of new clients in terms of the size of their brand, and in terms of the scope of the project that we're working with them on recently. And I have two visions for the future. One is our own management. So as we pick up more and more accounts, we get better in creating systems to create content. That's making us really, really strong. Some of our clients are seeing pretty incredible growth. I mean, we just started managing the Kosmetsky Center's accounts on all platforms, and they had more than 60,000 views from everywhere in just the first month, right? So you're seeing, and this is a place that started with 500 followers across all platforms. So serious growth. At scale, I think one of the things that's really interesting to me about social media is I do not feel as if there's a single company or a person who is considered to be an authority on how to use social media to do anything. Sure. And I always looked at that and I thought, why not my company? As we manage more accounts for more folks and we become experts at reaching a wider group of audiences, I think that we're going to be able to take the information and the stuff we've learned from that and use it to make better and better products for bigger people. I'll think one of the things that's most exciting for me, and we've just started working with the Luling Economic Development Corporation to produce a podcast for them. And the reason why that's really cool is we can take that podcast, the long form, and then also make little clips of all of the highlights of, say, a new initiative, an opportunity to get a loan from EDC, or I don't want to say any specific program because I don't know about it. But I think that there's a change in social media. Value is not in virality. Value is built in building trust. So if we can have everybody in Luling following all their pages, learning about all that stuff, that's only going to be, maybe 100,000 views a month maximally. But that's going to be so valuable because we're going to be on the horn to everybody we need to talk to. We're going to be showing them all this stuff. And you're honestly
making a difference in a lot of people's lives.
Oh, yes.
For businesses and things like that you're promoting.
Exactly. And I feel like a value like that is incredible. Yeah. And my vision, I want to go to every community kind of outside of Austin, just because Austin is just going to be so big and bureaucratic. It's hard to break in. And I want to offer these same kind of resources to them where their cities and their initiatives are being shared with their community and they figure out how to reach the people they're trying to talk to and just share some of this incredible work they do.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Joe, thank you so much.
Thanks again for having me, man. Looking forward to seeing what happens with DSE.
Yeah, absolutely.